over on a trip with another person there. We saw a giant radial sitting off down in Florida. The next morning we saw one in southern Alabama, which preceded quite a bit of violent thunderstorm activity, including some tornado activity in South Alabama. If you twist the weather currents around, you're going to get some tornadoes in the right season. So you can augment the tornado activity, you can augment the rain activity, you can move great masses of clouds, great cloud banks over, great cloud covers over a large part of the United States, and you can actually change the jet stream itself and change the pressure areas. And then by very slow rotation, so that you don't slip out and lose the stuff you're capturing halfway around the world, you can move those cloud masses and influence the weather substantially. And in my opinion, that's been going on over our head, certainly since shortly after the death of Brezhnev. There was considerable activity with giant radios and the virtual transmitters and the grid network shortly before that very, very unusual cold snap, which broke so many records in so many cities all across the country. 1983 was a very unusual weather year. Certain records were really broken. For example, I don't have all my information collated together just yet, but I can give you a few things. One of the things was the highest barometric pressure ever recorded was recorded in 1983. Another thing that happened that was unusual, of course, was the cold records in quite a few cities, some, 75 or 100 of them, were broken. All-time records were broken in that December cold snap we had. Let's see, another thing that was very unusual, the turbulence or the amount of swirling of the air in the atmosphere was some 10% or so, 8 to 10% higher, according to the Weather Service, than has been noted. And so we had some very unusual things occur, some very unusual extremes occur in the year 1983, closely correlated with this very unusual activity of adjusting in over North America a gigantic grid of virtual transmitters which can be used to control the weather. So, in my opinion, what I'm describing to you is the evidence, admittedly somewhat circumstantial at this point, but certainly the giant radios can be photographed. I now have photographs of one. The grids can be photographed, and certainly they can be observed. I'm encouraging everybody to start observing the clouds and look for those formations. If you see those formations, let somebody know. Let me know the sighting that you've seen them. Draw a sketch. If you've got a camera, take a photograph. If you can't let me know, let Bill Jenkins know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'd like everybody to load their camera, get it ready, keep your eye in the sky, take a picture of it, note what time it was taken, or if you don't have a camera, at least write me and say, I saw it here and I saw it there. Get it to me, and I'll get it on to you, Tom. Because I have seen, myself, those circles and the radials going out for them, not knowing about this sort of thing. I said, isn't that odd? But we do have them over Los Angeles.
Now, they're a little clever over California. The one in Huntington Beach that morning, they had just cut the power out of it, and it was beginning to dissipate. But because I was out so early, I was out just after the crack of dawn, I got to see the thing. But an hour later, if you'd looked at the sky, if you hadn't known that there'd been a real solid one there, you'd have said, well, there's just a very unusual shaped set of clouds sitting up there, because it was dissipating from the winds aloft after the power had been cut. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out is everything I'm describing is directly related to the work of Wilhelm Reich,
yes,
the cloudbuster and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
What a cloudbuster puts out is a peculiar kind of radiation, which is really what I've been calling the zero vector radiation or the scalar radiation. And what it's causing is a peculiar kind of resonance between the scalar currents in the ground and the scalar currents in the atmosphere. And as William Reich clearly showed, and other people who have showed after him have shown with cloudbusters, You can, for example, influence with that simple device and that kind of resonance, you can influence gigantic masses of clouds, and you can shape the weather. And you can also do it by the transmitters I'm discussing here, and you can do it halfway around the world, which is what I think is being done to us. So anyway, that's a sort of a cook's tour, a short tour through the weather engineering over North America. I am going to give a paper on this summer at one of the conferences, and the paper will be published and available from John Ratzlaff as soon as I get the time to finish writing it. I'm gathering the rest of the data for it now, and I will print the pictures in there of the giant radial that I took here over Huntsville. And if I'm lucky, or if somebody else sends me one, we'll have other pictures of these giant radials as well.
Well, we hope everybody gets their camera out and starts looking for those, and we'll describe those again. Tom, do you want to take a break with me for just a second? We'll do a couple of things and get right back to weather engineering, which is going on above our heads at the present time by our dear friends of the Soviets. Be right. One of our distinguished scientists in this world. He's been involved with the weapons analysis of the Soviet Union for the Pentagon. He's been involved in developing some of our more formidable weapons systems here in the United States. He's a man who knows exactly what he's talking about. And he kind of riveted us here, Tom. You hear for the last 40 minutes talking about the manipulation of weather over the United States by the Soviet Union. Told us some things to look for where you can see it happening yourself. And certainly we've been feeling it here in California. You've been feeling it there in Alabama where you're talking to us from tonight. And it's getting to be a serious problem.
Yes, it is, and until we, bring this thing out strongly enough that we have enough people seeing it, photographing it, the idea here is if we get enough people reporting what's happening in the sky, you'll get the regular scientists in looking at it, and you'll get the government looking at it, and they'll realize that something unusual is going on.
The government is not looking at it right now, you telling me?
Well, as far as I know, not much of the government, let's say, is looking at it. Not nearly enough.
Why is that, Tom?
Well, it's understandable. The things I'm talking about here, the scalar wave, for example, is not in the present scientific theory. At best, what I'm talking about would be regarded as highly controversial.
Exotic.
If we can move it close enough to where we get it into the highly controversial area, where it's accepted but highly controversial, and by the way, we're doing some very strong things to try to get it to that point. At that point, then, you'll find a lot of normal, orthodox scientific agencies will begin looking at it. The moment they do that, the moment we get the sharp young graduate students and the sharp professors in our major universities looking at this thing, at that moment we're going to make an awful lot of progress real fast. And that's what we've got to get happening. We've got to get them turned on to it, and we've got to get them doing the phenomenology experiments. There are thousands and thousands of phenomenology experiments that have to be done before we'll fully understand this area. Only a few of those have been done at the present time.
How many transmitters do the Soviets have that are doing this, do you think?
I wish I knew. If I had to estimate, I'd estimate somewhere like a dozen.
It sounds to me like
that's purely a guesstimate. It could be many more than that, or it could even be fewer.
They have to use an enormous amount of energy. Where are they getting it?
Okay, there's two sources of the energy, of course. If you look at normal sources, you could get it from a power plant. You could tie your local hydroelectric power plant, or the Soviets are pretty good at magnetohydrodynamics, and at least in some of their literature, they have shown that they've had entire power plants run by magnetohydrodynamics that have been tied up to transmitters. For example, in some of the translated Russian papers I was looking at, they have admitted transmitting something like 18 or 20,000 amperes through the entire crust of the Earth. And so we know that in that kind of transmission, they're using very, very powerful transmitters.
Well, they use extremely powerful ones up around Riga. Those are the ELF transmitters.
Yes. Now, the things that we've been calling the woodpecker signal, and the woodpecker name, as you know, Bill, comes from just the sound that the chirp signal makes when you detect it. It sounds like nothing more than a woodpecker's bill hitting a block of wood. And so it was promptly dubbed the woodpecker signal because of that rapid chirp, rapid drumming noise that it makes. Those transmitters, I've seen various estimates on how powerful they are. Some of the estimates run up as high as 100 megawatts. Some even estimate a little higher than that. But whatever they are, they're extremely powerful transmitters. The other thing is, the thing that we're detecting from them is only the normal component. Now, when you use a lot of power in something like that, there's an efficiency with which you would get scalar waves. In other words, you wouldn't get 100% pure scalar waves. You'd get a lot of noise, a lot of spillover, and the other stuff. Now, that part of it, I think, it's like what's above the water we can detect, but what's below the water we can't see. The majority of the stuff that they're transmitting is below the water, so to speak. It's in the scalar range, and our normal detectors don't detect that. Now, since we're on this subject, and since I know that some people in the audience who are listening to me are technical folks, I want to say one other thing just for the technical folks.